Hello and welcome to another episode of the Aim High podcast. I'm your host, Ben Shin, and today's guest is Yvonne Howe. Yvonne Howe has had more than 25 years of executive business experience as a senior executive, including as co-founder, advisor, and managing director at investment firm Cove Hill Partners and as an operating partner at Pillar Ventures. Before that, she was a chief financial officer at PillPack, an online pharmacy that was acquired by Amazon in 2018. Her most recent role was as Secretary of Economic Development for the state of Massachusetts. Thank you, Ms. Howe, for being on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me, Ben. This is awesome.
All right, to start off, we'll first talk about your childhood and upbringing. Because this podcast is centered around being an Asian American leader in business, it is important to first understand each guest's childhood and upbringing as an Asian American. Ideas instilled within you from your parents and environment may have helped you become successful in where you are today. So first, could you explain your childhood situation growing up? Where did you grow up? Did you have any siblings? What were family dynamics like?
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Ben. I'm so grateful that you're doing this, and I love that you're telling the Asian American stories, and I wish that we had more of this when I was growing up. So I'm the first in my family to be born in this country. So my grandparents were born in China. My parents were born in China. And we grew up outside of Chicago. I went to a public elementary school where I was the only Asian kid except for my cousin and my brother eventually. So it was not the most diverse place. And I didn't speak any English when I went to kindergarten. So they actually thought I was developmentally delayed. And so they put me in a class for kids with lots of learning issues. And then I figured out English eventually. But for me growing up, I was very close to my family, and our grandmothers lived with us. And so my grandmothers at nighttime would tell us stories about their childhood. And so I grew up with this very strong sense of appreciation of all the sacrifices they made and my parents made to give us these opportunities. So one of my grandmothers had her feet bound. And so she lived into her 90s, but her foot was a size 4 child's shoe. So even in her, 80s, we'd go to the mall to get her shoes. We'd go to Stride Ride and get her kids' shoes. And my other grandmother would tell us stories about how she remembered the day the Japanese came and shot all of the teachers at the school. And she remembered having to flee on horseback. Both of my grandfathers were generals for Chiang Kai-shek. And so they fought against the Japanese and then the communists, and they had to flee to Taiwan. And so my parents came to this country on scholarship for grad school. And their whole dream growing up in Taiwan was to study hard and get a chance to go to Meiguo, which is the beautiful country. And so they worked so hard to come here, and they came to this country with almost nothing, like very little money, very little network, not that much English. And they were so proud to be American, and they wanted to give us, all these opportunities. So I very much am a believer in and am the product of the American dream. Like I'm a living evidence of the American dream here.
Yeah. And how did your parents' and especially your grandparents' experience influence your perspective on work and success in the U.S.?
Well, I kind of grew up just knowing how lucky we were to be here in the U.S. And so I always knew that my job was to work hard and to try my best at school and everything else to make my family sacrifices worth it, to make them proud, and to really take full advantage of everything we had here in terms of education and jobs and everything else. The other thing is that they gave me a lot of perspective because, even on some of the hardest, most stressful days I've had, I stop for a second and I think about my grandfathers, and they had to fight on battlefield, and they had to sacrifice, they had to see their friends' kids die and their friends die on the battlefield. Or my grandmothers who had to flee with taking their belongings and taking their small children and finding a way to get to Taiwan and then, raise their families and then coming to this country without speaking English. Nothing that I'm going to face in my life is as, challenging as what they and my parents have faced. So there's a lot of perspective there that I think is helpful.
Mm-hmm. And did you feel any pressure to conform to certain expectations, either from your family or from your broader community, and how did you handle that?
I mean, for sure, I think that, when I was growing up in the 70s and 80s and 90s, there was this very pervasive view of Asian Americans as being one-dimensional, of being the model minority. So, I had lots of people always joking with us about how I'd be good at math or, good at piano or good at tennis. all of those kind of stereotypes. And also, in my jobs, now I've been in business for a long time. I've had people still in recent years make funny comments to me saying things like, oh, well, we didn't expect, small Asian women like you to have so many opinions or to talk so much, or, wow, like you seem very aggressive for someone who's like you, like things like that are kind of very much based on stereotypes and expectations of what Asian Americans should be like.
Mm-hmm.
For my family, I don't think it came from my family per se, but more just from me. I always just thought that my job was to make my family proud and to try to take care of my parents and my grandparents and to be a good daughter, a good granddaughter. And I'm the oldest of my dad is the oldest of 6, and I'm the oldest of my dad. So I also really try to take care of my cousins and our extended family as well. So I grew up just thinking that was part of my duties, as being so lucky to be born here.
Yeah, and during your childhood, was there a moment that kind of shaped your career ambitions, or even if you didn't realize it at the time, maybe something you wanted to do in the future?
Well, I mean, because I'm a child of immigrants, my parents always thought like, oh, you should become a doctor. So I actually went to college and was pre-med, and I got into medical school. And then I went to do the rotations over the summer, and I realized I didn't really love medicine. It's just a lot of, I'm very admiring of doctors, but it's a lot of memorization and a lot of being around people who are sick or dying. And it was hard for me to kind of take that on. So then I thought I was going to be a professor because I didn't know what else to do, and I knew what professors did. And so I won a scholarship to go to Cambridge University in England to go be an economist. So I did my master's degree there. And I loved economics, but then I realized that being an academic is pretty lonely. You're kind of isolated, running a lot of models, writing these papers. And I am a big team sport person. I was a very short walk-on rower and lightweight crew at Williams Div 3. And I love being in the boat with team members. And I also love seeing impact right away. So I decided not to do academia, and I ended up in business. And in many ways, I knew about business because of my dad. He was an accountant and then a CFO of a company. So I grew up watching him. And so I kind of ended up following him into business.
Yeah, and that kind of leads on to the next part about education and early career. Can you maybe explain your transition then from after your master's at Cambridge to then your position at Honeywell?
Yeah, so first when I figured out I wasn't sure I wanted to be an academic, and I was like, gosh, I've been in school forever. I need to take a break. And McKinsey had recruited me when I was in college at Williams, and they had kept in touch with me when I was in England. And I thought, you know what, why don't I take a break? I'll get my master's degree, take a break from academia, go try out this business thing, and make some money, pay my parents back, and then maybe I'll go back and finish my PhD later. And so I started out at McKinsey. It was fascinating because at McKinsey, you start out in a class of people. So we had like 35 people in our class. There's 7 women, and all of them had done business in their undergrad. They had been at McKinsey or at Goldman Sachs or some, place for 2 years, gone to business school, Harvard Business School, University of Chicago, Northwestern, and then they were now starting at McKinsey. I started at the same level as them, even though I didn't have any background in business whatsoever. But McKinsey said my master's in economics was similar to an MBA. So I was clueless. And I was also 20, how old was I? I was like 23 years old or something. I was really young, had never worked in business, didn't know how to dress, didn't know how to leave voicemails, didn't know how to use PowerPoint or Excel. And I think people thought I was going to get kicked out right away because McKinsey is a very upper out culture. But somehow I figured it out, and I got very lucky. I had some really great mentors, and I learned a lot, and kind of ended up staying at McKinsey for almost 5 years. Uh-huh. And then I loved many parts of McKinsey, but the thing that was hard about it is that we would do all these strategy studies, but then when it got interesting and you started to have to implement it, we would leave. And I was kind of curious to see, well, what does it look like when you actually do the strategy and we want to see the rewards of your work? And the other thing is that McKinsey, you travel to your clients. So I traveled so much. I was gone all the time, and I got married, and I didn't want to have that lifestyle forever. So I ended up getting this recruiter call for Honeywell. And Honeywell back then was not a sexy company whatsoever. But what was exciting to me about Honeywell was that I interviewed with the CEO. So I was 27 years old. Mm-hmm. I interviewed with the CEO of this, $30 billion revenue company. And he spent several hours with me. And he basically convinced me that if I wanted to really learn about business, about manufacturing and product and sales and global and acquisitions, I should join him. And he was trying to turn this company around. So he promised me that I would learn a ton. And so I took a leap, left McKinsey, and went to Honeywell. And I had a great experience at Honeywell. I learned so much.
Yeah, and at Honeywell, what were like the types of things that you were doing? What were like your responsibilities in that role?
So I started out by first working with the CEO and the senior team on corporate strategy. So we were doing a turnaround. When I joined Honeywell, the stock was 20 something. When I left 5 years later, it was 70, and now it's like 250. So the company has really turned around, and I was there at the very beginning. So the first thing I worked on was corporate strategy, which really, if you look at a $30 billion business, what businesses are we good at? Where are we winning? Which businesses should we be in? Which markets are growing? And which businesses are terrible? We're never going to win. These are not good markets and we should exit. And then where should we do acquisitions? So I worked on that first. Then I ended up going out into one of the divisions. I went out into the security business, which we had acquired. And they were a bunch of entrepreneurs, had not been integrated properly, kind of doing their own thing. And they were very skeptical about me coming from corporate, going into this, this division. I didn't know anything about security, and they were all from very different backgrounds than me. My boss was a guy who grew up in Alabama on a tobacco farm and didn't go to college, but so smart and so wise. And so they started out by saying, "Who is this random lady coming from corporate?" And then we ended up becoming an awesome team. And we ended up doing a ton of acquisitions into new spaces, buying new technologies. We expanded internationally. I helped us expand into China, which is a big, big growth priority. And we ended up going from almost no business in China to having, $100+ million of revenue in China. And then it kept growing after I left. And we did a whole bunch of work around branding and customers and operations, all kinds of stuff. And then I got a chance to go run a division. So I ran a almost $2 billion business unit within security, which was also really fun. That was my first chance to be like a mini CEO.
Yeah, and how did the opportunity then to go to Bain Capital come about?
So I wasn't looking to leave Honeywell, and a recruiter called me, and I was like, "No, I'm not interested. I don't even know what Bain Capital is. Like, I don't know what private equity is. I hadn't gone to business school, so I'd never heard of private equity." And the recruiter said, "Well, the guy from Bain Capital is going to be in New York and would love to have dinner with you. Just have dinner with him." So I ended up having dinner with them, and we started dinner at like 5:30, and we shut the restaurant down at midnight. And basically, he convinced me that. So Honeywell was great in so many ways, and I learned a lot, but it's a public company. So you're living constantly by the quarterly pressures of hitting earnings. He convinced me that the thing that's great about private equity is that you can think longer term. You can think in 3 to 5 to 7 year, cycles, and you can actually make changes to the business and make investments and not have to worry about the constant short-term quarters. So that was very appealing to me. The other thing that was really appealing to me was that I knew a lot about strategy from McKinsey. I knew a lot about operations and day-to-day running of things from Honeywell. I didn't know a lot about finance because I hadn't gone to business school. So Bain Capital said, "We'll teach you all about balance sheet and liquidity and board governance and thinking through capital structures." So I was going to learn a lot of things around finance and around being an investor that I didn't know before. So that was very appealing to kind of broaden out my skill set. And then the other thing that was helpful for me is that at Honeywell, when I looked ahead at where my career is going to go, the next logical places would be for me to move and take on bigger roles in Europe or in Asia or in Canada or somewhere else. And my husband and I met in high school, and he has a job as well. And it just, when I looked at the other people who were more senior than me at Honeywell, I didn't see how he was going to be able to keep a job if we had to keep moving every couple of years. The nice thing about Bain Capital is we could move to Boston, and I would travel some, but we would stay in one place, and then he could have a stable career, and we could also have our kids have a stable upbringing and have consistent schooling and all that. So those were all the things that led me to Bain Capital.
Yeah, and when you were at Bain Capital, what did you do in your role?
So at Bain Capital, there's two types of people in general. There are people who do new deals, who are looking for new companies to invest in. That was not me. The second kind of person was me, which is that once we invested in a company, my job was to make sure the company was successful. So I would go sit on the board, work with the CEO and the team, and make sure, do we have the right leaders in place? If not, how do we find them? Then we make sure we have the right strategy in place, and then we make sure that we execute it. So how do we actually deliver on the results so that this could be a good investment? So that was my job, and I worked with many different companies. Some of them you probably heard of, like Canada Goose or Bombardier Recreational Products, Gymboree, Agua Sensata, Consolidated Container, Big Tex. And then in two unique circumstances, I went in and helped run them. So I became CEO of one of our companies during the Great Recession, which was very challenging. It was a Japanese company that I ran for almost 2 years. And then I also became COO of Gymboree out in San Francisco for about 6 months while we were looking for a new CEO. So I actually went and helped run some of the companies as well.
Yeah. What was your favorite part about going in and being on like the board of some of these companies and help leading them?
Well, the best, most rewarding thing is when you have great people that you're working with. So some of the CEOs I loved, and I'm still in touch with them today. They're just really good people, really great teams, and believe so much in their business. And it's very rewarding when you're working in close partnership with a great team to then see the ideas that you have come to life and see the business grow and launch new products and gain new customers and expand and see the revenue grow and the profits grow and see the company succeed and go public. Those are very, very rewarding things that I loved.
And like being around many CEOs and like C-suite level people, what are like some characteristics or traits do you think that you saw in them that made them especially like successful?
I think, being a CEO is a very hard job, and there's many ways to do it. And I've been around really impressive, world-class, great CEOs. I've also been around not so great CEOs. So I think one of the commonalities that I reflect on a lot is I think some of the best CEOs, you have to be smart. You have to work hard. You have to, have certain skills. You have to understand the business, all of those things. But some of the best CEOs, I think, are the ones who are very comfortable in themselves. They know who they are. They're secure. They're not arrogant. They're humble and they're curious and they want to learn. But they also know what they don't know. And they're not afraid to hire people around them who fill in their gaps and who complement them and who are in many cases maybe smarter than them at something or stronger than them at something. Those CEOs are the best because they create great teams. And if you have great teams, you can really accomplish so much, and you can accomplish so much more than you can as one person. So the best CEOs, I think, are the ones who are really great team leaders and who understand that camaraderie and how to build an awesome team.
Yeah. And when you had to step in to be like the interim like CEO and CEO, what was like some of like the difficulties of doing that?
Oh, I mean, so many. So so Bain Capital typically doesn't put someone in a company unless it's an extreme circumstance. So I became CEO of D&M, Denon and Marantz, which is a very high-end consumer electronics company. I became CEO there because when the Great Recession happened in 2008, this company almost went bankrupt. And we had to make a change, and nobody wanted to come be CEO of a company that was so close to bankruptcy. So they had no choice but to put me in. We had no choice but to put me in. And so I went in, and it was a turnaround. So I was in Japan probably 2 weeks out of every month. I was in Europe. I was working crazy hours trying to restructure our debt, work with all of our lenders and change our covenants and also take cost out and also grow our business and build our team. It was a very, very challenging experience. I learned a lot. It almost killed me, but it didn't. So it made me stronger. But it was a very challenging experience. But I loved the team. Again, it was very challenging. We had time zone differences, and also many of my direct reports were Japanese salarymen. So they're like, 30, 40 years older than me, and they had been in this company their whole lives, and they didn't speak English, and they're engineers. So when we had meetings, we had to have simultaneous translation on headsets and like try to talk through a translator going back and forth. But yet we still became great friends, and we all wanted to do the same thing, which is to help the company succeed. So that was very challenging. Gymboree was also very challenging. The CEO quit right before Black Friday. And so I became COO. And then the guy who we promoted to interim CEO, he ended up having a heart attack right before Thanksgiving. So I ended up having to run this $1.4 billion company with, 13,000 employees across, thousands of retail stores during the holiday season. And they're headquartered in San Francisco. So I took the 6 a.m. flight out every Monday, and I took the red eye back every Thursday night. And I had 2 little kids at home. It was a very challenging experience. But again, I really believe in the company and the team. And we were able to do a lot of good things to help the company survive through that period.
Yeah, and what were some of like the biggest lessons learned from those experiences that you then used in your future roles and experiences?
I mean, I think I've talked a lot about team already. I think having great people who trust each other, who are different from each other, who who can debate and argue and disagree, but at the end of the day, who support each other. If you have that teamwork, everything is, you can overcome anything, including near bankruptcy, including Black Friday, and all of that. I think the other thing is that it's a balance, because when you're in these very difficult situations and you're trying to come into an organization or do a turnaround, or it's like kind of go time with Black Friday, you need to stay calm as a leader and just to stay focused. But you also need to drive a sense of urgency around telling the story. Like, this is where we're trying to go. This is where we are now. These are the things that matter. And get people inspired and excited to be part of this and to own it and to do it together. So that combination of having, kind of calmness and be able to prioritize, and then to tell the story and have people get excited and have urgency, that kind of, that combination of things is very important.
Yeah. And then after your time at Bain, what did that transition look like to PillPack, and what did you do in that role?
Well, so the thing that's interesting is that, Bain Capital is a great place to be. It's very well respected. It's very lucrative. There's really smart people. And again, I wasn't like actively trying to leave, but a couple of things happened at the same time. One is that I turned 40 and I started to think about, if I stay at Bain Capital for the rest of my life, this will be great. And I'm so lucky. But is this really why my grandparents sacrificed so much? And like, is this kind of it for me? If I retire and this is all I do, it's very predictable. I know what the future's going to look like. It'll be interesting and fun, but is this it? Then I had a friend of mine introduce me to a friend of his who was running this little startup. And then right at that same time, my husband's mother, we diagnosed her with Alzheimer's. And so we moved her from Chicago to Boston, and we were taking care of her and getting all of her medications and trying to slow down the Alzheimer's. And we were going to CVS every weekend and getting all the pills and trying to put them in the Monday and Tuesday and, sorting them all. And so when I met the friend of a friend who's running the startup, he said, I'm doing the startup. It's an online pharmacy. We mail your prescriptions to you, just like Amazon does, and you get them all pre-sorted. You never have to wait in line at CVS, and you never have to sort the pills. They all look the same. You never have to worry about it. I was like, wow, this is a cool business. Why haven't I heard about this before? We need it. So I signed up my mother-in-law, and we got our first shipment. And he kept talking to me, and he was like, our business is exploding. We're growing 300% a year. We could really use someone like you who's got more experience. Everyone in the company was smart, but really young. He's like, would you ever join us? And I was like, why would I ever join you guys? You're this big. No one's ever heard of you. The CEO's a pharmacist. I was at Bain Capital, and I never done venture, never done pharmacy, never done healthcare, and never been a CFO. But the more I talked to him and the more I thought about my mother-in-law, the more I believed in this mission. So I took a huge, strange career twist. I took a 90% pay cut in my cash comp. People at Bain Capital thought I was probably having a midlife crisis. I joined this tiny startup as COO and CFO. And it was one of the best decisions I've ever made. I loved that business and I loved that team. And it was crazy. The highs were very high, the lows were very low, but we had such a fun time together, and we built an incredible business that really helped customers stay alive and take their pills and their medications. And then we ended up with this great outcome, and we sold to Amazon. So it was really an incredible ride.
Yeah. And like, what was like along that journey you said, like, what was like your favorite part there?
I mean, we had a lot of fun. I mean, we had so many good stories, so many good stories. We had a great team. I mean, some of the funny stories. Let's see. Well, one of them is that when I first joined, one of the things that was an urgent crisis was that customers were really unhappy because they would call with questions, and the hold time was 10 minutes, and sometimes. And I said to the team, so this reported to me because I ran operations, so customer service and calls reported to me, and I said, guys, what should the hold time be? And they said, we want people to have the phone answered in 30 seconds or less. And I was like, wow, 10 minutes is terrible compared to that. Like 30. And also, if you wait on the phone, if you're sick and you're, trying to get an answer to your question and you have to wait for 10 minutes, that's a terrible experience. So I went and spent time with the customer care team, and I took phone calls, and I was like, why is it taking so long? And I asked them all for their input. And we found all these different reasons why things were taking so long. Some of it was a systems issue. Some of it was that people weren't taking breaks at the right time. Some of them was that people didn't even know how long it was taking to answer the phone. We didn't have the right visibility or the right metrics. So we started tracking all these things. When we took all their ideas, we started implementing them. And then the guy who was running the customer care team Again, very different from me, but I love him so much. I was just texting with him yesterday. Hugely different. He was very skeptical of me too. He was like a pharmacy guy. He's like, who are you coming into our business? You're like this fancy Bain Capital person. You don't know anything about pharmacy. He and I became very close friends. One thing that's funny about him is he hates bananas. Hates bananas. So I told the customer care team, if you guys answer the phone consistently in less than 30 seconds, if we hit that target, we're going to make Chris Pickering eat a banana in front of all of you. And this was a huge motivator for the team. So we implemented all the different ideas and we had the metrics. And when we hit 30 seconds or less, we had this huge meeting and I got the most disgusting ripe brown banana. We put it into this like serving thing. We made him get up on stage and we made him eat it to celebrate with the team. We got everybody pizza and everything else. But it was a big win for the team. That was a really special moment. The other special moment, there were many special moments, but another one was that we were working on the sale to Amazon and it was very perilous. We almost went out of business. We had another buyer that had us almost bought us, but then that didn't work out. So we had a deadline with Amazon that had to be done by like June 26th or something like that. I can't remember the exact date now. But at 4 a.m., we were still working with the lawyers and we weren't sure the deal was going to get done. So I was like up all night and I was like on this kitchen counter. I was like lying here, like with my phone next to me, like thinking like, is this going to happen? Is this not going to happen? If it doesn't happen, how are we going to have money? And then my phone rang and they said, the deal's done. It's like 4:30 in the morning. So I went upstairs, I showered. Then I got in my car and I drove to our operations center. We had all these hourly people who took huge risks and they made, $15 an hour. Many of them didn't have college degrees. They took a huge risk. And they were the frontline workers, but we gave every one of them equity in the company. So nobody knew this was happening. So I drove to New Hampshire to be with them and I got donuts for everybody. And I saw the people coming off the night shift, saw people coming in the morning shift. And I talked to one of our long-serving employees, like one of the early guys. And he was like, I was like, hey, Kenny, how's it going? He's like, man, I'm thinking about getting married, but I don't have enough money. I want to like save up, whatever. So this is like at 7:30 in the morning. So I'm walking around. Nobody knows what's going on. At 8:30 or maybe 8 o'clock, the news hit the wire. Amazon acquiring PillPack for $1 billion. And you could see the news hit as people saw it on their computers. And the whole like operations center erupted in cheers. People were crying. They were screaming. Like it's just like pure joy, like how proud they were. And then because they all had equity, they all had money. They're like, oh my God, like all that stuff we thought was funny money, we now have money. And so I saw Kenny at 8:30 or 9. He's like, can I get married now? Now I have money. Like it was like a really special moment. And when people got the checks hitting their bank accounts, they could buy cars, they could take their kids on vacation, they could, put down payments on houses. That's a very like incredible feeling to be able to accomplish that with that team.
Yeah. And then after your time, after like selling PillPack, why did you decide to start like Pillar VC and Cove Hill Partners?
Well, so a couple of things. So one is that I am so glad we sold to Amazon. It was absolutely the right decision. And it was a great outcome for everybody, as I just discussed. And I loved learning from Amazon. So I spent a lot of time in Seattle. They're a very impressive company in so many ways. And I still own a lot of Amazon stock. But I didn't love being in such a huge company. And I liked doing something more entrepreneurial. And I had a lot of different opportunities to go back to a startup. But I was so exhausted from PillPack, and it was such a special thing. I wanted to do something different. So I ended up going to Cove Hill Partners and being a co-founder there of an investment firm. And part of why I went there is I wanted to learn a lot about software. And we were investing in SaaS businesses. And I wanted to learn more about the investing side because I hadn't done that as much at Bain Capital. Mm. So that was, and I wanted to learn how to start an investment firm. And then I ended up, our family moved to DC because my husband got a job in the Biden administration. And as part of that whole process, it became very hard for me to be full-time in business because of conflicts of interest. So I ended up doing a whole bunch of advising and boards. So I was on 4 public boards, Gentherm, ZipRecruiter, Flywire, and CarGurus. I was on a bunch of private boards, including Bose and Verta Health and a bunch of others. I was doing some nonprofit work. And then I was advising Pillar Ventures, who had invested in PillPack, and Cove Hill. So I was doing this portfolio of things because of my husband's job. And I thought I would be doing that until my kids went to college. But then the phone rang and I ended up in state government, which is very unexpected.
Yeah, and now we will talk about your most recent career as the Secretary of Economic Development for Massachusetts. So, how did this opportunity come about, and why did you take the new job?
So I never thought I was going to be in state government. I was sitting at home the week before Christmas in December of 2022, and my cell phone rang, and it was a number I didn't recognize. And I picked it up thinking it was maybe the kids' school and we're missing some form or something. And it turned out to be, "Hi, it's Maura Healy." And I thought, this probably is like a prank call, or maybe this is a robo-dial and they're asking for money or something. And I said, "Hello?" And she said, "Yeah, this is Maura Healy. I just got elected governor. I'm looking for Yvonne Howe." And I was like, "Oh, wait, this is not a prank call." And I said, "Yeah, I know you got elected. I voted for you." And I wasn't really, I had only met her once. I wasn't really involved in the campaign. And she said, "Well, we're putting together our cabinet and we really want someone with business background, and your name has come up. Would you talk to us?" So I had lunch with her and the lieutenant governor the next day. And then flash forward on New Year's Day of January 1st, 2023, I got a call from the governor offering me this role. And I got sworn in on January 17th of 2023. So It's been a very unexpected career twist, but such a gift and such a privilege and such an honor to be able to serve our state.
Yeah, and can you explain like what you did in this role and like what your like responsibilities were?
Yeah, so our economy is a $780 billion or so economy. So we're bigger than the country of Ireland. We're about a third the size of Canada. We're the wealthiest state in terms of income per capita, and we are the leaders in so many parts of the economy in terms of life sciences and healthcare and universities and financial institutions. We have with small businesses and tourism. We have an incredible, economic strength. So my job as Secretary of Economic Development is really responsible for all of that. So I had many different parts of the job. So one is that probably people don't know, but reporting up through this office is all of our licensing. We license 500,000 people as plumbers, electricians, hairdressers, massage therapists, and we inspect elevators, all of that. So that reports up through our office. We then have a bunch of grant programs that we give out. So we invest in all the fundamentals of the economy around, roads and sewage and, all the infrastructure that you need to have economic development. So we have those kinds of programs. We have all these quasis that report up through me. So I chaired the board of Mass Life Sciences, Mass Ventures, Mass Tech, Mass Development, was Mass Growth Capital before we merged it, and then Mass Tech, I think. But all of those organizations are quasi-state government. They report up through our office, and we give out tons of research grants and capital equipment grants, workforce training grants, all of that. And then a big part of my job was meeting with companies and traveling around the state and meeting with businesses, small businesses, hairdressers and restaurateurs, and then huge, giant Fortune 50 companies, and with our universities, our hospitals, and working closely with the cabinet and the governor and all of our different legislators to try to get the right legislation passed and the right resources to support our awesome state.
Mm-hmm. And what were some of your biggest challenges when making some of these like large scale decisions in your role?
I mean, I wouldn't say challenges, but I think one of the things that took a lot of our efforts was in our state, we're required once every 4 years to do a state economic development plan. So we took that very seriously, and we put together an awesome council, 20 some people, that we told them this is not something to put on your resume. This is real work. We're going to make you work. So we had CEOs of, all kinds of different organizations. We had legislators. And then we went and did regional sessions, and we opened it to the public. And I was kind of like, is anyone going to show up to these things? We had 1,300 people show up. Again, a wide range of leaders. And they gave us all their input about the economy. And then we did sector deep dives. We did 11 deep dives around high tech and around hospitals and around universities and around tourism and around agriculture, all these different sector deep dives. And then we looked at a lot of data, and we published our plan. Our state economic development plan is kind of like our strategy for the state. It's called Team Massachusetts because we have the best team when we work together. And it's called Leading Future Generations because this is not a time for us to rest and hang out. This is a time for us to make the right decisions, make the right investments to make sure we continue to lead for many generations to come, for your generation and the next many generations. And we've always led in Massachusetts for 250 years. We've led since we threw tea into the harbor and fired the first shot heard around the world. And we started that revolution, and we led that revolution, and we won that revolution that created this country. We now need to lead again in all these new areas. And so that plan we published, and it's available online, and then we turned that plan into a bill. The bill is called the Mass Leads Act. It's a $4 billion bill that puts all the money behind the plan to bring it to life. So it's $1 billion for life sciences to cure the next generation of diseases, $1 billion for climate tech to solve the problems of climate change, and then there's $100 million just for AI to lead in applying AI. And then there's lots of money across lots of other areas around robotics and quantum and cyber and regional tech hubs and small businesses and tourism, all these different areas. Getting that bill passed was very hard. It took a lot of effort to get everyone on board and to get it passed, but we did get it passed in November of last year, and now the team is working to bring that to life. So that's a very big accomplishment, and that's going to have, I think, a lot of positive impact for many years to come. And thank goodness we passed it, because we are now living in a very challenging environment with what's happening in the federal government.
Yeah, and what has been like the most rewarding part of leading Massachusetts' economic development?
I mean, our state is, we are so lucky to live here. We are a state that has been well governed. I grew up in Illinois, so I don't take it for granted. We've had no governors go to jail in Massachusetts, which is not what many states could say. We have a very strong balance sheet. We've had Republican governors and we've had Democratic governors. We all get along. We're all reasonable. We don't agree on everything, but we work hard and we lead with innovation. We're a state that has the #1 public schools. We have so many great universities. We have 500,000 of the best and brightest coming to study here, including people at your school at Andover. And those people who come here, they want to solve big problems. They're not here to make a quick buck. They're not here to like do things that are easy. I think about JFK all the time, the original son of Massachusetts, and he said it the best. We choose to go to the moon, not because it's easy, but because it's hard. We want to do hard things because they make a difference. They make the world a better place. And so here we lead at curing disease, at fighting climate change, at thinking about how to apply AI to solve problems, at educating people, taking care of people when they're sick. This is the stuff that we're really good at. And so we're a very special state, and we're a great place to live. This is a state where we care about protecting your right to choose what to do with your body, especially if you're a woman. We let you love who you want to love. We welcome diversity in immigration. We're one of the highest states for immigration. We have mountains. We have beaches. We're incredible, like in terms of culture and arts. We have great sports teams. We have great food. Like, it's a pretty awesome place to live. Our state has a chance to be a different model, to be a better model, which says that we can lead by being super high growth, pro-business, strong economy that's solving these big problems and creating all kinds of great jobs for all kinds of people. And we can be the best place to live. That is awesome for every kind of human. And it's also humane and kind, where we care about each other. This is a better model. And it's certainly, we led 250 years ago with the starting of the country. I think given what's happening in our country and in the world right now, this is a time again for our state to lead and to show that there's a better way.
Yeah. And moving on to the fourth part of the podcast, talking about challenges and overcoming obstacles. Being an Asian American in a leadership role comes with its own sets of challenges. What were some obstacles you may have faced in your industry, particularly due to your background, as you mentioned a little bit before?
I mean, people, I think because I'll say a couple things, Ben. One is that I'll be completely transparent. For much of my career, I was the only woman, the only not white person, and the youngest person in the room, always. And there's advantages to that. I've been the beneficiary of affirmative action, I'm sure. And people always remember who I am because everyone else is like, a middle-aged white guy named Bob or Mike. And so I've definitely benefited in many cases. However, as I've gotten more senior and have been in the boardrooms and in the C-suites, there have been weird things that have happened to me, including people making comments like, we don't expect small Asian women like you to have so many opinions, or comments like, I was in a public company board setting where a CEO made a comment about an employee saying this was a devious, manipulative Oriental. And I was sitting in the room, and I was the only not white person, the only Asian person in the room, Asian American person in the room, and I waited for someone else to speak up, and no one spoke up. And finally, I had to say something and to say, hey, we need to be careful about the words we use. And so there have been many uncomfortable things that have happened. And when those have happened, I'm so glad I'm in the room. And when it happens, I try to stay calm, and I try to find allies, and I try to play the long game of helping to make sure that people understand why this is not a good thing. And a lot of times people aren't malicious. They may not be aware. And so some of it is around education and being curious and being patient with people. But I'm so glad I've been in the room and I've been able to have some power to influence these things.
Yeah. And what has your cultural background played in shaping your leadership style and perspective as a business leader? And how have you found ways to use it as a strength in your career?
Well, I mean, so much of how I view everything is shaped by my background. So I think all the time about my parents and grandparents, and I feel so lucky to have this chance. I think part of the reason why I've been so driven and so curious to try new things and try to make a difference is because I know how lucky I've been, and I want to make sure that others have those same chances. So I want to give back and help other people have the same opportunities that I had, including my kids and people like you and everybody else too. I also think that because I have this perspective of being a child of immigrants, I don't take things for granted. So I work really hard, and I think I take it seriously. I also think because I grew up in a big family with so many cousins and so many aunts and uncles, I'm all about trying to help people work together and to have fun together. Because at the end of the day, what really matters is relationships, and those are very meaningful. Being able to actually accomplish things and help other people feel good about themselves and feel happy and excited about being part of something. Those are really important.
Yeah. And moving on to the last part of the podcast where we talk about advice and inspiration. The first question is, what do you think makes someone a great leader?
I think having self-awareness and having a combination of being self-confident and comfortable with yourself, but also being humble and curious and knowing what you don't know and being able to understand how to get other people to work together and to trust each other. Those are all magical things for a great leader.
Yeah. And you mentioned mentorship before and how it can play a huge role in one's success. Who were some of the mentors that you had, and what was some of the advice that they gave you that really played a significant impact on your career?
I mean, I've gotten so much good advice from so many people, but my parents always taught me to just do the right thing, even if it's hard or inconvenient. There's like a word in Chinese, like it's called, ingai. Ingai means like you should do it, even if you don't like it, even though if it's not good, suck it up, just do it. It's the right thing to do. So I kind of always have that in my mind. One of my favorite bosses told me, there's a funny story. He asked me, should we buy a company or not? And so I was like fresh from McKinsey. I thought I was so smart. I like did this huge long email. Here are the pros. Here are the cons. There's a model. There's numbers. All this stuff. And he wrote me back one line, which said, indecision is the assassin that will kill you. Meaning, I asked you a question, should we buy the company or not? You gave me like this huge long answer. You never answered my question. And so knowing how to make decisions and having a point of view and having conviction is something else I've learned. I think a lot about Maya Angelou's quote of like, it's not, what you say, it's not what you do, it's how you make people feel that matters and what they're going to remember. So a lot of times it's not about the decision itself or what you're doing. It's about how did we get there and how did people feel about it? Do they feel like they were part of it? Do they feel like they own it? Do they feel like they're part of the team? Do they feel heard and seen and recognized and celebrated? Those are very small things, but they go such a long way to say thank you to someone or to congratulate someone or to, celebrate someone publicly and just appreciate them. It goes a long, long way.
Mm-hmm. And how do you stay motivated, especially when things aren't going your way or you're facing high pressure moments in your career?
Well, I mean, again, like I have a lot of perspective and I try to stay calm and focused on, what do we need to do and not to get freaked out. I also was just saying to someone, so I was a very short walk-on rower at Williams. I never even knew that crew was a sport because I grew up in the Midwest. And they wanted me to be a coxswain, but I was like, if I'm going to do this, I want to be in the boat. And so in very high pressure moments, I think a lot about the start of a race when you're in a boat and you're sitting there and you're all tense and your oars in the water and it's pure quiet and still on the water and all the other boats are lined up and you're waiting for the gun to go off before the race starts and your heart is pounding. And in that moment, it's so important to be calm and to breathe and to try to just like be 100% present. So when the minute the gun goes off, you can start your strokes and get going. So I think about that a lot in like very high stress moments, how to like be present and to breathe and to be focused,
Yeah. And for the last question, how do you define success now, and how has that definition changed since the beginning of your career?
When I was younger, I thought that business was all about like getting to the right answer, like doing the math, doing the model, the regression, and having this perfect PowerPoint. And then I realized that in real life, there are probably some wrong answers, but actually in real life, there are many potentially right answers. And the real thing that matters is not getting the right answer. The real thing that matters is executing it and bringing it to life. And to do that, you need to have humans who are brought along with you, who believe in it, who are, excited to own this and to make it happen. So it's all about the team and about relationships and about investing in those kinds of, those kinds of friendships and relationships. That's what really matters. The other thing I will say is that one of the things I've had to learn, and I'm still working on, is that I enjoy working and I get a lot of satisfaction from making a difference and learning. But workaholism is also not a good thing, and trying to figure out ways that you can have energy left for your family. At the end of the day, your family and your friends and their health and your own health, these are all the most important things.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time today. Really enjoyed
Thank
talking
you,
about
Ben.
your career.
Yeah, thank you. Please stay in touch. Good luck with this project. I'm happy to recommend other people who are much smarter and wiser than me for your podcast. But I'm so grateful that you're doing this work to tell our stories.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks, Ben. Bye.